Good evening, I'm Erica Bivens. Welcome to this special edition of 7 News Nightcast. The candidates in the runoffs for Senate and Congress spent lots of money on TV ads, but apparently that didn't motivate a lot of people to go to the polls. One Calcasieu election official put turnout at around 20%. We begin the race to replace retiring Senator David Vitter. Back on November 8th, Louisiana voters whittled a huge field of 24 candidates down to 2. And now Louisiana voters have decided who's going to Washington. Republican State Treasurer John Kennedy defeating Democrat Public Service Commissioner Foster Campbell 63 to 37%. And we mentioned that crowded field in the Senate race. It featured 2 congressmen, including Charles Boustany. He almost made today's Senate runoff, but ended up just behind Foster Campbell back on November 8th. A dozen candidates entered the race to replace Boustany, 2 Republicans making it to the runoff. But they couldn't be more different. On the one hand, there's political veteran Scott Angelle. On the other, the Cajun John Wayne Clay Higgins. And it's Clay Higgins going to Washington 56 to 44%. And speaking of the victor, Clay Higgins and his supporters gathered in Lake Charles tonight. That's where KPLC's Jillian Corder joins us live.
That's right, Erica. You called him the Cajun John Wayne, and that's right. That's how you got your start, and now you're congressman-elect. How does it feel?
Ma'am, I'm completely overwhelmed. I'm humbled. I'm uplifted. I feel energized and just ready to go to work to begin the mission of restoring our nation.
You said earlier that you felt prepared, and a lot went into this campaign because you'd never done anything like this before.
Well, I've never served in this role before. I never thought I would. Something I never envisioned in my life, but I'm certainly a patriot. And patriots, you know, we serve our country, and we're prepared to do whatever's necessary to make things right. And this is just such a beautiful time in our nation when we're prepared to stand this thing back up, man. We face great challenges, incredible perils, and it's time for common sense, working class Americans to sort of repatriate our government, our federal government, and get this thing back under control for the future of our children, our grandchildren. You know, it's just a beautiful day in America, and it's been a hard-fought battle to get here.
Now, you're most well known for those YouTube videos that have gone viral, the tough talking cop. Do you plan to use that same no-nonsense approach in Washington? Well,
I'm a no-nonsense kind of a guy, but I do have a great respect for tradition, and I understand that I'll be entering a arrangement of, you know, men that have as men and women patriots from across the country that serve their country honorably and with patriotic fervor, and I intend to be a participant in that. However, I have a tendency to be heard. And it's time for some very clear messages to be delivered. So I'll be respectful and statesmanlike. However, we're gonna make ourselves heard. That's for sure when we get there.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman-elect Clay Higgins. You heard it here on KPLC. We really appreciate it and wish you well in Washington.
Thank you, ma'am.
At your service, live in Lake Charles, Jillian Porter, KPLC 7
God
News.
bless America.
Thanks for that. Meanwhile, Scott Angelle and his supporters gathered in Breaux Bridge tonight. KPLC's Caitlin Rust is there.
Erica, emotions ran high here tonight at Buck and Johnny's. Earlier on in the night, everyone seemed pretty confident that Angelle was going to clinch this highly contested seat, but the mood has become a lot more somber now as Angelle took the stage and announced his concession to Congressman-elect Clay Higgins.
Obviously, the results are not what we wanted, but we are obviously discouraged by the results, but our hearts are not broken. We believe that America's greatest days are still ahead. We believe Louisiana's greatest days are still ahead. And with these group of unbelievable volunteers, I'm absolutely certain that we will reach those great days. So thank you all very, very much.
And Angelle also announced that he extended his offer of help to Clay Higgins during that phone call. At your service, live in Breaux Bridge, Caitlin Russ, KPLC 7 News.
And it was a similar story in the 4th Congressional District. That includes Alan Beauregard and Vernon parishes. Congressman John Fleming's Senate bid came up short, and there was a large field trying to replace him. Republican Mike Johnson and Democrat Marshall Jones making it to the runoff, and it's Mike Johnson who's going to Washington 65 to 35%. Meanwhile, in Jeff Davis Parish, 2 candidates vying for a Lake Arthur council seat following the death of Alderman Eric Turner in February. Democrat Alden Robinson Sr. defeating Republican Kirk Connor 61 to 39%. And voters in Iowa were asked to support a 1% sales tax to fund improvements to the waterworks, sewer and wastewater systems, street repairs, park improvements, economic development, and funding for bonds. Voters supported this tax, which will generate $650,000 annually. And in Vernon Parish, voters were asked to approve a property tax to fund building and upgrading public buildings and facilities. Voters said no to the plan to raise about $1.5 million over 15 years. Meanwhile, in Allen Parish, voters were asked to approve a property tax that would add about $1 million to the general fund over 10 years. Voters said no to that idea. Also in Allen Parish, a sales tax proposal on the ballot. It called for raising the sales tax by 0.3% in unincorporated areas to pay for building and maintaining of roads and bridges. Voters also said no to that idea. Our election coverage continues with analysis from former State Representative Vic Stelly next. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special election edition of 7 News Nightcast. Let's recap the big races. In the Senate race, Republican State Treasurer John Kennedy defeating Democrat Public Service Commissioner Foster Campbell. Kennedy will replace Senator David Vitter. And in the 3rd Congressional District, a feisty race between 2 Republicans, and it's Clay Higgins defeating Scott Angel, earning the right to replace Congressman Charles Boustany in the House of Representatives. And in the 4th Congressional District, that includes Allen, Beauregard, and Vernon parishes, Republican Mike Johnson faced Democrat Marshall Jones, and it's Mike Johnson winning there. And here to discuss more about the results is former State Representative Vic Stelly. Vic, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for asking me, Aaron.
Let's first start off with that Senate race. 24 candidates whittling down to just those 2. Louisiana clearly a red state here, but with Trump throwing his support behind Kennedy, do you think Foster Campbell really had a fighting chance?
Not really. I think his biggest claim to fame was the fact that John Bel Edwards, the governor, came out and endorsed him, but that may have just been a loyalty thing for Democrats. But no, I think Kennedy was heads-on favorite. It's the 3rd time he's run for this seat, and John's been in the headlines quite a bit. He's been a very fiscally conservative person in the state, and had a lot of good name recognition. So I was not surprised by that one at all.
All right. Now, Republicans, we know they already have control of the Senate, but had Campbell won the race with the extra Democrat, do you think it really would have made that big of a difference in the Senate?
It may not have been that big a difference right off the bat, because I think it's 52-48 for Republicans with 2 independents at this time. But the word is that several of the Republican senators are under consideration for cabinet positions. So had President-elect Trump selected a couple of Republicans to get cabinet positions, then if they had a Democratic governor back home, they may have appointed a Democrat. Well, in the Senate, a lot of things can happen, and that could have been a difference. That's why you saw a lot of out-of-state money in that race. Mm-hmm. A lot of the ads that you saw locally were not by these 2 candidates. They were from out-of-state PACs. If you read the fine print at the bottom, you would see that. So I was not surprised that John won, but I was not surprised of the fact that it was such a hotly contested race and so much money was spent on it.
Absolutely. Now, a big part of the election tonight that we're talking about is voter turnout. We had great numbers locally in the presidential election, but here in Calcasieu, around 20% turnout for the election. Do you think voter apathy played a role tonight?
I think it did. I think maybe a little voter fatigue. Mm-hmm. I think they were a little tired of all this stuff, tired of all the negative stuff, even though political realism is over the years has been that negative campaign works. It obviously didn't work in the congressional race, which we'll talk about after a while, I would imagine. But I guess a lot of different things entered into it, but 20% is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to transition to the 3rd Congressional District, open for the first time in 12 years with Charles Boustany leaving after running unsuccessfully for the U.S. Senate seat. We had 2 Republicans in this runoff. Clay Higgins, a big Trump supporter. Do you think that contributed to his victory?
I think so. The mood of the people seemed to be in that direction. A non-political figure. Another political realism that you usually think is you got to kind of move your way up the line. You start off as a school board member, a police juror, maybe a legislator, then you run for Congress. Well, he ran straight for Congress. Now, he did get a big push with his activities before because he was a Crime Stopper guy, such as Tony Mancuso used to do for years here in Calcasieu. So I think he got a lot of recognition, and then, of course, the Cajun John Wayne. I mean, that went over very well, but I really did not think it would be that big a difference, but it was.
Do you think that, kind of going off of that, media really played a big factor into Higgins winning?
I guess so. I mean, you wouldn't say that he was a very articulate guy listening to him on TV, but people that have talked to him individually tell me that he's a very sharp guy. He's not just the old Cajun John Wayne. He is a very intelligent guy, and hopefully he'll do us a good job. Attack
ads against Higgins in this one were fierce in the media. What was your take on that?
Well, I mean, apparently people didn't care about 4 wives and $100,000 back child support, if all that is true. That's another thing. I found a lot of people are a little leery about what to believe. You hear so many things in campaigns that you found out later were not true, or maybe a little bit of it was true, but he didn't really have 4 wives. He just had 2, or something such as that. I don't know what the deal is, but I think people kind of burn out on that type of stuff.
Sure.
And that probably just kind of went over their head.
Finally, the 4th Congressional District, Republican Mike Johnson winning this one. What do you make of his win?
I don't really know that much about that one. That is not where we are. I've read some things about Johnson. I think he was well known as a sitting state representative from Shreveport, whereas the other fellow was a local attorney but did not have any kind of political background. So that kind of went against what we were talking about down here. But one thing that I thought was interesting, the last reapportionment, there was an effort made to put us in the Shreveport district, which those of us who represent Calcasieu were not too happy about that, because we felt like we would really be a stepchild in Lake Charles compared to Shreveport. We feel like we're sort of a stepchild with Lafayette, but nothing like we would have been with Shreveport. So we were able to fight that off. But I didn't really know too much about either one of those candidates. I was not surprised either way.
Either way. All right. Well, thank you so much, Vic Stelly, for joining us this evening. Gunfire wounds 3 at a Lake Charles nightclub. The Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office responded to a shooting early this morning at Dunbar's nightclub on Highway 90 East in Lake Charles. It happened at Dunbar's nightclub there, as we said, around 3:30 this morning. All 3 victims suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities believe they're looking for multiple shooters and want the public's help. If you have information, you're asked to contact the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office. And Lake Charles police now say Thursday's shooting on North Prater Street and Friday's shooting on Winterhalter Street are related. Tonight, there's 1 arrest and 1 suspect still at large. Authorities consider 33-year-old Adrent Carter of Iowa armed and dangerous. He's wanted on 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Anyone with information on his whereabouts or the shootings should call Lake Charles police. Meanwhile, SWAT arrested 32-year-old Brandon Carter Friday evening. Brandon Carter is charged with 4 counts of attempted first-degree murder. He's jailed on a $3.2 million bond. And a man accused of murdering ex-Saint Will Smith takes the witness stand. Prosecutors say Cardell Hayes shot Smith during an altercation after a traffic accident in April. Today, Hayes told the jury he only opened fire after a drunken, irate Smith got a gun from his SUV. Prosecutors say the evidence does not support Hayes' contention that Smith was armed. Hayes is charged with second-degree murder. Up next, Ben Terry has your first alert weather forecast. Stay with us.
From the 7 Storm Team, your first alert weather with meteorologist Ben Terry.
All right, got to show this sunset once again. It was a beaut out there this evening. If you were out in Lake Charles enjoying the forecast this evening, you probably remember the temperatures at 6 p.m. We dropped quickly into the mid-40s. We've actually seen temperatures rise a few degrees since our report at 6 o'clock, and we're up to 48 now, even at DeRidder from our DeRidder Sky Cam. Beautiful view there of the Christmas lights, and look at temperatures now, 49. We're actually beginning to see that rise we were talking about that would occur tonight as a result of that change in wind direction. So Futurecast will show temperatures going on up by 9 a.m. tomorrow, mid-50s. Of course, by the lunch hour, we're talking temperatures closing in on 70s for highs tomorrow. So quite a change from the cool weather we had today. Highs only made it up into the mid-50s. And of course, all that's to do with the winds coming in out of the south tomorrow, 10 to 15. We're expecting those gusts over 20 at times. So a rather breezy day ahead for us as we go into the daytime hours of Sunday. But what about rain? We're holding off on the rain so far. For the weekend's been nice, even with those added clouds tomorrow. I'm not worried about any rain for our Sunday. That begins to change, though, as we go into early next week. Next storm system is beginning to make its way toward the Rockies here. This low pressure area will be pushing east, and it will send a front our way as we go into Monday. That combining with all that Gulf moisture that will be pulling in from the south, that will set off a round of some scattered showers. We're not talking an all-day washout. These showers are going to be fairly light, and they will be moving through at times during the day Monday. Some of these may get here early in the day just with all the abundance of moisture in play. Keep in mind, we're going to keep these temperatures warm for the days ahead. In fact, we've got highs into the 70s on Monday. This is a rather weak front, and yes, while it will stall here for a couple of days, it's not really going to do much for temperatures, at least in the short term. And with rainfall amounts at generally under 1/4 of an inch, it's really not going to do much to add a lot of rainfall into the bucket, but it will keep a cloudy and at times wet day around from Monday into Tuesday. Mild weather invades the area, and like we said, we're seeing no push of that Arctic cold back our way as that front sits over us Monday into Tuesday. So we'll keep about a 40% rain chance in the forecast for both Monday and Tuesday as a result of that. Lows in the 40s, increasing though into the 50s overnight, up to 70 tomorrow. It does look like by the end of next week we will see a brief stint at some cooler weather by Thursday, but hey, we're back up into the 60s and 70s by Friday. Maybe see a chance of more showers toward the weekend. It's been a nice weekend so far. Tomorrow it stays nice, just a lot warmer than today.
Just that roller coaster continuing,
Yep,
huh?
definitely.
All right. Well, stick around. We'll recap the big races next. Let's recap some of the big races. In the Senate race, Republican State Treasurer John Kennedy defeating Democrat Public Service Commissioner Foster Campbell 62 to 38%. Kennedy will replace Senator David Vitter. The victorious John Kennedy spoke to reporters in Baton Rouge tonight.
And thanks to all of you, my supporters. I'd rather drink weed killer than be anywhere else than right here tonight. I received a call a few minutes ago from Commissioner Campbell, and I want to congratulate Commissioner Foster Campbell and Governor John Bel Edwards on the campaign they ran. They were worthy. They ran a spirited race. They were worthy opponents. You know, competition makes all of us better. And I am looking forward to working with Foster and John Bel as we try to return Louisiana and America to prosperity.
And Foster Campbell spoke to supporters tonight also in Baton Rouge after failing in his Senate bid.
I am still for raising the minimum wage. It's ridiculous. People can't make it on $7 an hour. We didn't have any takers on that. As far as the other candidate, I want to equal pay for women. I think it's absolutely makes no sense at all for women to do the same job as a man and get paid less. And I also want you to know that I'll never stop fighting for working families. I'll never start standing up for what's right. I have a job on the Public Service Commission where I get to deal with consumer issues every month, and I've always been on the side of consumers. That's a badge that I wear very proud.
In the 3rd Congressional District, a feisty race between two Republicans, and it's Clay Higgins defeating Scott Angel and earning the right to replace Congressman Charles Boustany in the House of Representatives. And in the 4th Congressional District, that includes Allen, Beauregard, and Vernon parishes, Republican Mike Johnson faced Democrat Marshall Jones, and it's Mike Johnson winning there. Well, that's going to do it for this special election edition of 7 News Nightcast. You can find a complete rundown of all the results on our website, kplctv.com. Our next news is tomorrow evening at 5. As always, thanks for tuning in and have a great night.